All right, welcome everybody to another BS Friday. That's right, I'm on the road again, coming from my makeshift studio, and we got an awesome conversation for you today. So, timber is one of our most sustainable building materials, but are multi story timber construction projects code compliant, cost effective, and are they safe? Tall mass timber construction is on the rise thanks to advanced manufacturing and engineering, along with prescriptive measures being more widely adopted across the U.S. There are still doubters out there, though, the ones who doubt that structural strength of wood based construction and are equally concerned about fire, termites, water damage, and more. Today, we point you toward the building science that supports building with wood. So we are going to welcome our good friend and new guest in IWBCC speaker coming up, Bill Parsons, who is the Chief Operations Officer, Woodworks, on Dave Cooper Live BS Friday. Bill, how you doing?
Great. Good to see you, Dave.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see you as well. Thank you so much. I know you got a lot going on. Woodworks is just killing it out there and making all these awesome things happen. But before we jump into who Woodworks is, what you're doing at the IWBCC conference, because we have a couple $100 giveaway today that we're going to be giving out. So you got to stay tuned and stay on. We want to know everything about you, Bill, from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Don't leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or we will call somebody in your family and have them on the show to get the real scoop. But you only got 2 minutes to do it. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. We don't have that much time to go through every detail. But yeah, this is great to be here. I'm the CEO of Woodworks. I've been with Woodworks since 2014. Prior to that, I've been in the wood industry another 13, 14 years. Before that, undergrad at South Dakota State, go Jackrabbits, and a master's degree at Washington State. And so kind of structural engineering background, and really, I guess, overall, most Woodworks staff is structural engineers. We're here to help and, help people make more wood buildings, help them be successful with their wood buildings. And I think given my background kind of more into education and innovation and offsite construction and helping people build faster and reduce their labor costs and all of that kind of ties directly to what we're really doing now. And what the most emerging topic is that's out there which is mass timber. Mass timber, kind of changes the game a little bit around where wood can go into commercial buildings and taller buildings. And really looking forward to chatting more about that and around everything that we can do on why does wood even get to go higher and that kind of thing. So it's perfect for this conversation.
Well, it is perfect for it because I think there's a lot of people out there, like we said in our opening monologue, that people doubt wood and don't really understand the properties of wood and how safe wood really, really is to build with. And we're going to hop into all of that. But first, Bill, why don't we talk a little bit about, Woodworks? What is it that you do? Like, what is the day-to-day? So people that out there that are watching this can learn and understand why they should connect with you guys, support you guys, all of that.
Yeah. So Woodworks is a nonprofit in the wood industry, and we're really here to help people build with wood in multifamily, commercial, institutional projects. So really, anything beyond a single-family house, we help out on, and we are that free resource on individual projects, just to make sure that things go well, that there's any questions that happen and concerns that they have, that we can address those. Overall, we really have two things that we do. One is education. This year we've done over 50,000 hours of education. So we want to train people, show them what to do, answer their questions. And then when it comes down to individual projects, we offer free project support. So we get in, help you look at your plans, talk to you about issues, connect you with manufacturers, work all through like the supply chain to help make a wood building happen. It's really free project support. We have 15 regions throughout the country where regional directors are available to, do that education from a lunch and learn all the way through our bigger events, and come into your office and help you out.
All right. So, and is there a fee for me to do that with you?
No, it's completely free. That's why we're funded by the industry to provide that service, because we know that there's questions. I think even mass timber and tall wood and this whole thing, wood is the incumbent, or not the incumbent, we're the underdog in this situation, right? So we have to be there to prove all of the things that to break the status quo and what has been built historically with steel and concrete, and to come in and answer all those questions. So we know we need to, we're one of the major investments the industry does to help answer those questions.
So why are we seeing such growth and interest in mass timber construction, over the last couple of years? It's really become a hot topic. I mean, decarbonization, all of this stuff has become a hot topic. So I'm assuming all of this that's happening is a win for the timber industry. But I'd love to hear it from your take.
Yeah, I think it's the start of a win. I think it's really early days. So mass timber in general, and the main product, cross-laminated timber that everyone's mostly talks about. There's NLT and DLT and other products, but mass timber, CLT, really wasn't even in the code until 2015. So it's a very new product. If you think of building systems that are there, it's only 8 years old. So it's really early days on mass timber, and we've seen rapid growth. Right now, there's on our Mapping Mass Timber page, we have a map that shows what the growth has been over time, and it's really this hockey stick of growth that's happening, where it's basically we've built 800 cumulatively. We built about 800 projects, but there's another 900 projects in design. And these are buildings of scale, multifamily, commercial, institutional buildings that are really starting. Why it's growing is really because people are interested. The carbon benefit is one part that's kind of just now starting to come into play, but really they're mostly interested because it looks good. It's a very good looking building, and they want the aesthetic appeal of having a natural material. Certainly post COVID, the offices that we're seeing built are not, tiny little garbage offices. They're really nice open office plans with natural materials. Mass timber is perfect for them, and mass timber offices have continued to be built, like the Walmart headquarters. The many tech companies have their offices built out of mass timber. But the second reason is really around with offsite construction, the ability to have things prefabricated and the installation to go much quicker. So we all know we have a labor shortage in this country, which is why prefabrication and how much can you do offsite, computer controlled through the factory, and the offsite components of that means that a mass timber building can be built 30% faster than normal construction. So when it gets built faster, it costs less overall. And that's really what's driving the growth in the map is that we have many instances where mass timber building is actually cheaper than a steel or concrete building. So then that's just why, it's America. That's why people continue to do stuff, is because someone's making money on it.
Well, there is that, but I mean, let's break down a couple of things that you were talking about, right? And there is the part of mass timber that is aesthetically pleasing, and there's been a lot of research. We've talked about it on this show several times, that the productivity of workers in mass timber buildings, because they're surrounded by all this beautiful lumber and it doesn't feel like white walls and fluorescent light bulbs everywhere, has a big impact on the productivity of students, right? Because you see a lot of this happening on students. You heard it at Walmart's headquarters now. What are you hearing on that, and what can you share with us?
Yeah, I think the idea of the whole nature of biophilic design and how do people connect people with nature, really seeing that as we look at buildings and the trend towards many architects trying to get everything to be about a healthy building ratings and healthy buildings in general. And wood and exposed wood is shown to do just what you said, kind of can make you more productive, can make you feel better. There's a lot of science out there related to just the connection with nature and the patterns that you see in nature, and you're feeling more comfortable around that. So that's just kind of a fringe benefit of it. I think it really comes down to me more of, when you're talking to these high-tech clients, it's quality. It's a quality building, right? Even though that it's, people have this perception that when you move into commercial space that it has to be steel or concrete. And really it's like replacing the mass of steel and concrete with massive wood, and that it has this higher level quality building, which tenants are paying more for. And that's part of our business case studies we have, which include all of basically the pro forma and the actual realized profits that these projects have brought in, and they're able to rent them more. And that is driving it. And it's because of the quality aspect of it. You're prefabricating things, you're designing it, you're planning for where everything is going to go ahead of time. It installs faster, And then that comes all the way through into a more quality building.
So when we're talking about mass timber and just listening to those last couple comments, right? We're talking about it being a systemized approach. Nobody's coming out there with these big CLT timbers and having to chisel them on site like we used to make log cabins. You're telling me that the whole building is designed off-site using newer technology, and then just brought to the site and assembled on site in big, massive wall panels and beams.
Yeah, I mean, I think that really I like the concept digital twin, because that's really what you're doing. You're designing and building at once in the computer, and then you're printing that design essentially on the wood when it goes through the fabrication process and the CNCs, and then it's just an assembly process. If they hear a chainsaw, something has gone horribly wrong. If someone's cutting something, it's really an assembly process, which is what leads to more things like steel workers erecting some of these buildings, because if they're used to assembling their structures, and just, it's about the connections really on the job site, not so much like, okay, let's move this wall over. Well, it's really tricky because everything's been pre-designed, and solve that where it's cheaper in the computer.
Well, time is money, and there's also a safety factor to it as well, being able to be assembled on site quicker. Walk us through the costs of this. Are you finding that mass timber is competitive with the traditional way people do it with steel and concrete?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that our business case studies show that, but also just the growth that we're seeing, I think, is another way to look at that. And you have big developers like Heinz T3 projects, which I'm sure you've all heard of, from Minneapolis. Now I think they've got 8 that are under construction or built, and that they're doing that because of all the savings that really do add up overall. So you have this initially the mass timber wood itself. If you just compare, per cubic foot to per cubic foot of steel or concrete or wood, the wood up front will be a little bit more right now. And it certainly depends on where prices are, right? When we ramp up post-COVID, wood was less economical than it is today. Now we're very much on par because the other materials have gone up and not come back down. So you have the wood itself can be more expensive if you just do a straight up dollars per square foot kind of analysis. But if you look at how fast you're going to install it, and you look at all the other pieces of it, and if you really think about fireproofing, the fireproofing of wood is built in. That's why you're designing for the char. We're going to talk about that more in a minute, but you're building for that fireproofing is built into the wood. So then how much is the fireproofing going to cost on your steel? How much extra cover do you have on concrete to cover the rebar? That's a component of it. And if you have to kind of put that into the overall cost analysis, we are basically, and time over time, we're really on par from a material cost perspective.
I can't help but go there, because Bill, when somebody says that fireproofing is built into the wood, and here's a guy like me, Labor Day weekend, getting ready to go have a bonfire with wood, and I think this is where the misconception comes in, and there's easy ways to explain this, but I think now would be a good time to say, answer that, because that is to me, I think the biggest concern most people have, or the biggest misconception that most people have with mass timber buildings, is that it's a fire hazard.
Yeah, and I think what it comes down to, it's still combustible. We're not saying that it's a non-combustible material. So we know that in a fire, wood will burn. But the nice thing is we know how it will burn, and that we've known that how it will burn for a long, long time. It's been for years since we've had glulam and solid wood. We know how those burn, and that's actually the benefit of building with wood. In a fire situation, that we can predict really how fast that char layer is going to move. And really, when I say that the fire protection is built in, it is a char layer. So what's going to happen is the wood itself, when it in a fire, it will in a massive panel like what we have, which is really the beauty of mass timber, is that you have this massive solid piece of wood. So it really acts like the log in a campfire instead of the kindling in the campfire. And so that char layer will move through and eventually self-extinguish itself. And then what will be left will be untouched, cool wood that has structural capacity. And so that's really what the math around mass timber is, that you design it for what will happen after char. And that fire protection comes in, just like a steel beam and it intumesces paint foams up and protects the steel. Right. On the wood building, you have the char that's just stopping the fire and going from there. And there's been all kinds of fire testing that we've done to actually get it into the 2021 code. So 2015 code, we had ability to have, mass timber, essentially cross-laminate timber was a product. And then in the 2021 code, it was a panel of building officials, fire officials, steel industry, concrete industry, and timber industry that came up with what the rules would be for 2021, which meant a bunch of testing. So they did all these fire tests, all these fire compartment tests that really to show what would happen in a real fire. I was there, it was unbelievable actually, because, and they kind of tricked us. They had this, where they lit the fire, the first fire that was there, and this was without sprinklers. In worst case scenario, right? You have the fire people can't be there. What's going to happen to these buildings? And of course, normally with they did other tests where the sprinklers came on and then everything went out. And it was really not exciting. But I was there for the exciting one, and this fire was like burning the contents out of the building, because they are these little compartments that they built. And we've got videos for this. I'm sure we can put them in the chat over time. But the videos itself, like the contents were just super intense when it did it. And it actually, the flames and the heat wave that came off of it, like cracked the glass in the observation tower, where we were 30, 40 feet away. But all this glass cracked and all this. And the guys running the test, this is the ATF lab, they were just laughing because they knew it was going to happen, but we were all freaking out because this fire was so big. And then as soon as the wood charred, or the contents burn out, the wood charred, fires out, just a short few minutes later. Right. And but they had to drop this fire protection shield and all this stuff because it was a pretty intense fire. And then to see that the wood structure itself was basically was freestanding and completely fine as it's designed, and you could touch. There's thermocouples throughout the entire wood where you can see where the temperature was, and it was basically to the cold to the touch, or basically the same temperature, room temperature, on the opposite side of the panel. So it's really unbelievable, the natural ability to insulate itself.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, so you're saying that there was this intense fires, windows are blowing out, and you had basically thermometers stuck in the wood, and you could tell that the inside of the wood was still at room temperature, even though the outside charred up. And I guess when it chars, it kind of makes an insulation around the wood. And I always equate it. I say, listen, if you want just a simple fact, go to your backyard fire pit, grab a log, and then hold a match to it and try and start it on fire. It's not going to happen. And it's really the same concept, right? Because it encases itself.
Yeah, and if it starts, it's going to die pretty quickly, because that char is just going to be and I'm done, right? And that's really what it comes down to. Of course, in a real building where you've got contents and everything else, which is really what burns, then that creates a lot of fire and a lot of heat, and so then the wood has more of a job to do. But it does self-extinguish. The videos really do tell that story very well, and that's why we're able to say, look, we know how this stuff is going to perform, because everyone's had that campfire experience, and we've had Glulam that has had this for 60, 70 years. So because of that, we're able to move the height limit up and continue to go up to a bigger building. So 2021 code went to 18 stories by prescriptive means, and then the 2024 code actually takes it a step further. There's additional testing for exposed ceilings, and it exposes type 4B ceilings even more. So there's more and more code changes allowing more exposure because we have more testing. And maybe it's a good time to talk about the Ascent project a little bit too. It's probably one of the safest buildings in the world, and because it's the tallest wood building in the world, and it had additional testing done because of the height. It was through a performance-based analysis that had a alternate means that went through the city of Milwaukee, and required additional fire testing. So they actually, almost to your log campfire analogy, they had to test a 3-hour column, because that test had actually never been done for what they were doing, because it was the biggest building ever built out of wood. And so they did that additional testing through the Forest Products Lab to really show that how it would stand up, and that informed their design. And because of that, and all the peer reviews involved in that, that was how they proved the safety pieces of that. And of course, it's got extra sprinklers and all of the other additional requirements that come with a tall wood building, even though it's not, and with all that. And then also the returns are fantastic on the building. So it was very cost effective on top of being very safe.
Yeah, and I guess, we got September 11th coming up, so it's a prime example. Like even steel, it gets hot enough, it's, structurally it can start to collapse. I mean, steel's made out of heat, right? Out of molten lava, steel, and all that. So the fact that you were able to do a test like you're talking about, get the building so hot that the windows are blowing out, but the internal temperature of the structural part of the wood, which is that real core portion of it. I mean, that says a lot. I mean, why aren't we having TV shows about this all over the country, showing people how awesome that is?
Well, I think people are starting to pick up on it, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
just like a new thing. It just takes a while to really show people all the new attributes of it and how does
right,
this work with the scent and things. There's been some pretty big media done around it, but
right,
ongoing. Like there's an HBO show actually about the scent, so there's some really cool stuff that relates to that. What else was I going to say about the September 11th comment? So the other thing is blast testing. So we've done blast testing. We didn't talk about this in the preview, but
hmm
we've done some blast testing to basically prove how CLT will work in that, which has led to some privatized housing on military bases that's
right.
been built by Lend-Lease. So there's a series of hotels now. I think the 7th is just under construction now. And, it's another thing. You wouldn't think that wood could stand up to that, but if you do the detailing and you know how it performs, which is mostly down to connections,
Yeah,
you can do the math. And that's really kind of what Woodworks is about, is like showing people how to do the math right. And in a new building technology like this, it's a whole lot about education because, we really don't have schools that teach wood engineering or wood and architecture are very limited. So
yeah.
trying to basically catch up for years of that not being in practice, there's a lot of people that need to learn about this so it can take off.
For sure. So, hey, for everybody out there that's just joining us right now, we are going to be at IWBCC coming up in Washington, D.C. So stay tuned. We got a discount code we're going to give you at the end of the show. Save yourself a couple $100. That's right. I said a couple $100 only right here on Dave Cooper Live and with Bill Parsons. Bill's going to be speaking there, so you'll want to go see Bill. And Jennifer and I will also be at the Industrialized Wood-Based Construction Conference, and we will be hosting panels and doing intros and others. So if you want to meet with Jen and I, we're going to be there as well. So make sure you stay tuned. We're going to give you some discounts on this. All right, Bill. So Woodworks, to me, seems like a no-brainer for anybody that's interested in saying, I want to build better. I want to start working towards the new codes that are coming out for sustainability, decarbonization. I want to give people a healthier place to work in. But I don't have a team of people that can do it. So if I call Bill Parson and the team at Woodworks, you're not only going to help me look over the designs, you're going to help me figure out what manufacturer works best for my area or my type of build. And you're going to help me put it all together. This is what I'm understanding. You're going to help me put it all together and understand all the value that it brings to include fire safety. What's not to love about that?
Yeah, I think it's a great deal, right?
It is.
It really is. And so, and we have the fire piece, and that fire piece is actually first thing people ask, but then it's actually fairly straightforward. So then you got to get into, well, how am I doing my acoustics? How is this going to, my building envelope how am I going to attach everything to this? What type of building is it? Because most buildings are less than 6 stories. So type 3, 4, 5, you have some options to make. What are the fire provisions that come with that? So you have a lot of those decisions that I think are even harder. How do you do your connections with your acoustics and your fire provisions? And that's where we really, our expertise can come into play. And we've been getting tons of these questions. And one of the reasons that, we're trying to grow, like how many people know this, right? So one of the things we built is actually the Woodworks Innovation Network is basically a crowdsourced view into who's built these projects, because honestly, we were getting too busy to answer the questions. I've got, the map that shows where all the dots are of what projects are built, but people wanted to know, well, whose project is that? What is that? What is going on there? What happened? So we have 400 of the 800 built projects are in this kind of crowdsourced network that shows what the project was, details of the project. And then also along with that, they go into who worked on the project, what the design team was, that kind of thing. So it's Woodworks Innovation Network .org.
Yeah.
This is our business case studies. All these projects actually, I think, are on the Woodworks Innovation Network as well.
Yeah, and we'll put links to everything for everybody as well,
Right.
so you can see that. So, you mentioned earlier 18 stories, Bill, and we've seen around the world that buildings have obviously gone higher than 18 stories. And I've seen it where it's more of a hybrid approach where you're mixing wood and concrete, which I think maybe gives it the weight. Like if you go higher, right? Because you can layer in concrete on top of the wood to go even higher. Yeah.
Yeah. So it depends on kind of the overall design. So there is a requirement to have some sort of concrete topping on top of a gypsum topping, to have non-combustible on the top. So that adds some weight overall. We've seen buildings like Manchester is the one probably the most that has weight up top, mainly because it's so skinny. It's a very skinny little hotel, and just to help from a wind-induced vibration perspective. But a lot of what we see when we go, why wood can go up, and a lot of places that it's built taller, all the Australian projects that were originally started with mass timber was because they had such weak soils. They're built on the harbor, and wood buildings, wood is like 20% the weight of concrete. So you have the ability to basically build a bigger building where you wouldn't have if you use steel or concrete. So like the soils component can be really useful. And then you have with the seismic design is driven by what the mass is of the building. So a wood building is lighter, which means you have less seismic forces. So you're able to go up overall. But most buildings are going to be hybrid anyways, because you're going to have a concrete foundation. You're going to have some steel connectors. And then depending on what it is, you might end up with a lateral system that's steel or concrete as well, depending on the height and what you're kind of looking for the building.
Yeah, for sure. And let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about the seismic, because you just did the seismic test. You were saying how awesome it is there's literally a big table that can hold an entire building and shake it like an earthquake. And you guys were just doing that out in California. So why don't we talk a little bit about what did you learn at that test? Where's the value of it? And let's talk about the connections and how it all fits together.
The NERI testing is really interesting. It was a 10-story shake table test, which has never been done on a building of 10 stories before, wood or anything. It could actually be wood because it's light enough that you can put it on there and get it to move, because you have to have these huge actuators to move it. And it's a 3D table actually in San Diego. It moves X, Y, and Z at the same time. So it's like, and what happens in the shake table test was it's basically replaying earthquakes that would happen in real life. So they take like the Kobe earthquake and they take, all of these earthquakes from all over and replay them. And then they do something that is called this multiple considered earthquake, the MCE earthquake. That is basically the earthquake that will happen 1 in 2,500 years or 2% chance in 50 years. And they run that earthquake against the test. And so the building itself is a new structural system that is going through the code process now, which is a rocking wall system. There's other rocking walls, but a wood rocking wall system hasn't been codified yet. And so this was the tests that were done to basically figure out, well, what is this going to be good for seismically, and can it pass and all that. So it's basically a wood multi-ply CLT wall that's restrained by some pre-tensioned rods. And then there's an actual fuse that is doing the dissipating of the energy that can be replaced after the earthquake. Yeah. So I have all this really kind of basic physics, but applied on this giant scale. And they ran that building through 160 earthquakes and had basically no damage. And these were 10 of these earthquakes were this multiple expected event that you would really see. And it was rocking. I went to a couple of the tests. One of them was like the multiple expected earthquake somewhere in Mexico, and which was not even the biggest one of the San Francisco or a Kobe type earthquake. And it was moving in all three directions, and it was super powerful. And then the building just comes right back to the middle, and you can inspect it easily. You're not like trying to fix all the walls and try to figure out what shear walls are still good, because the lateral system is very visible and very interchangeable and predictable. So it's going through the code process now, which will let us go to higher building strength, building heights with a wood lateral system, because today it's limited how high you can go because we haven't done the testing. So again, getting that math right.
What is the maximum height allowed by code right now?
Oh, for a lateral system, I think it's 60 feet.
Got it.
Is the overall for a wood lateral system completely. But of course, gravity can go all the way up to this 18 stories. So that's kind of the difference. Why you see a cent tower or intro or the bigger ones with concrete shear walls. The biggest one going on right now, the Webster project, 16/2 building in San Francisco. The core was having trouble getting caught up with the wood construction because the core was going slower than the wood was flying up behind it. So but those are the kind of systems that, and again, back to your question of like safety and reliability and what do people think? I mean, the codes is there for life safety of the occupants, picking a system that we know very well that works, and then build a wood building, and then you're sequestering carbon as you're doing it. So that, we talked a lot about all the other benefits, but you have this 50% carbon that's riding along with everything else, faster building and cheaper building. And so talking about how do these buildings compare on a sustainability level, we really end up with wood winning in many, many cases.
Talk to me about the connectors. I often hear, well, the wood will fail before the connectors fail, or the steel fails, or anything like that. How does the connection system with the wood work? Or is it going to be metal connectors, or are we using like the old school wood pins that run through like we do, or is it a mix?
Oh, I mean, it really depends depending on what the type of building is, and if you have a protected connection or non-protected connection.
Yeah.
In the smaller buildings, it can be a pure bearing connection. So you're just bearing on top of it and going from there. Most everything involves pins or dowels or screws, steel or aluminum, depending on what happens. There's a lot of different manufacturers that make them. Simpson, Rothenblast are two of the most prominent that make mass timber specific connectors. And you have, so it's just kind of, there's a series, depending on if you're in a type 5 building, you can allow some exposed steel, or really most of the fancier connections or larger buildings use the wood to protect the steel connectors, because you don't really want your connection to be the weakest point. You want the overall system and the panel itself or the beam to be weaker than the connection, right? So as you design that, that's just part of the learning curve of designing a mass timber building. But at the end of the day, what we're seeing mostly in the US is post and beam construction, which we know how to do that. We know how to put beams and posts together, and you put a panel of CLT on top of it, post and beams, more CLT. And it's a very simple system, which is why it can be cost effective.
Right. I love this. Bill, what haven't we touched on here that you want to make sure everybody knows about Woodworks? And then we'll talk a little bit about IWBCC, and we're going to get to some comments to wrap up here in just a few minutes.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is that as you're learning this, you're going to have questions. Like, just reach out and find out and ask your question, because as everyone's learning this, there's always new things to figure out. Hey, I've got a new configuration. Okay, let's dig into it and understand it. So we're available to help on that. And I think that trying to design a wood building, you need to kind of start early and have wood be part of that solution. It's really hard to design a whole building and say, let's just price it out for wood and see what happens. I can tell you it's not going to work. It's going to be too expensive, because you have to really design with the idea of wood and what it's going to be and the spans and different pieces like that. Because we can do big grids, but you got to plan for them up front, not just try to be like, this is the total constraints, because you just can't really jam it into that area. So to get people involved early, reaching out if you have questions, using all these resources that we have, and then asking us something. If you can't find something, just let us know.
Yeah, for sure. And IWBCC, what are you're keynoting, man? Like, you got the big stage. What are you going to share with the world?
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit around the growth of the mass timber market, because we know where all these dots are. So let's talk about it. People are very interested in how this market's growing, what's happening there. And then I've got also moderating another keynote talking about all of the great stuff happening in DC related to kind of how do we get this technology into other areas, under served areas of DC, and a developer that's really working on that. And as well as other many big names related to the offsite world and people that are trying to do this. What Blueprint Robotics is speaking. We've got a big talk on carbon and how do you do this carbon analysis. Many other pieces of it. So, and I'm actually really, I think the talks are great, but I also think the exhibit floor is going to be great. Most of our mass timber partners are there. Anybody working on in the mass timber space is really on that exhibit floor, and co-partner. It's co-located with Greenbuild, which, you know, there's two separate programs, but Woodwork, the IWBC keynotes. If you go to IWBC, go to their keynotes and the Greenbuild keynotes and the whole IWBC talks, and then the show floor for both that's co-located with Greenbuild and IWBC. So there's a lot of stuff to see in a short couple days in DC. So I'm pretty excited about it. We'll have a bunch of our staff, big booth there, talking about Woodworks Innovation Network, talking about all of the materials that we have.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, we're really looking forward to it, Bill. We're looking forward to meeting in person and seeing each other. And again, Jennifer and I will be speaking there as well. And for those of you who are wondering, Bill Parsons is not another name for Mark Willie. It's not Mark Willie shaved. That's Bill Parsons. Sorry, Mark. Mark actually is on the road today, and he's been out traveling around doing what Mark does and showcasing innovation and construction. There you go. There's a sorry to not have a single. Have a great time, Bill Parsons. Always enjoy working with Woodworks. Happy BS Friday to all of our friends. Shout out to Sean St. Amour. Yeah, and I talked to Sean right before the show, and everybody's been traveling everywhere, so it's been awesome. So good to see you. Glad you were able to comment, Mark. Thank you. All right, why don't we go to a couple comments here? And Jen, while we're doing that, don't we have a discount code, a couple $100 off that we can share with all of our guests? I mean, YouTube and Twitter and everything's lit up with people. LinkedIn's lit up with people. So let's share it, right? There you have it. Go ahead, Bill. Tell them, what is it? 200 off IWBC? $200?
Yeah, $200 off IWBC. Yeah, off the wow. Rate there. And you get to go with all that stuff, the 2 sessions, keynotes, and the exhibit floor. I think it's really going to be a useful event to learn about mass timber, learn about a lot of offsite. Right.
There you go. So when you go there, you know, tell them Bill Parsons and Dave Cooper sent you. You want your $200 off IWBC. We hope to see you there. Not only that, you get to meet all these great people like Bill and others, which are fun. So let's go through a couple comments here and see who is out there joining us today. Jose, hey, Jose, good. Excited to learn about connectors in mass timber. Well, I hope you learned something today. And if you're not going to IWBCC, now you just save yourself $200. You can go talk to Bill directly there. We got Tom ready. What's happening, Tom? Hi, guys. Sure, we'll have some questions because I have a project that integrates mass timber as structural with LGS wall. I'm assuming he said panels and trusses. Question, do you have examples of blending of mass timber in LGS?
That's a good one. I'm not sure, right? This is kind of an example of one of those things that are like, hey, what if we did this? Like, oh no, let's check it out, right? And the Woodworks Innovation Network's got some searching where you can search by different products, and maybe that would be a good place to get started overall. Sure. And then there's probably examples of a building type that's similar. If it was an office or a warehouse, we've got a few of those on there. So I think that might be a good place to start.
All right. Appreciate your question, Tom. Hey, Stephen Basic. Just got to give a shout out to Stephen Basic, one of the best architects in New England, but he builds and designs all over the country, and his entire life and focus is about building it better and designing and building energy efficient homes all the way through passive house. So good to see you, Stephen. All right, Daniel Delisle. Hey, buddy. Good to see you, Daniel. Thank you for joining us. Woodworks, such a great resource over the years. Janelle Leaflad, Ricky McLean. Thanks, Bill Parsons and team. Awesome. Thank you for tuning in and listening today. Appreciate you very, 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 very much. Let's scroll down and see what else we got here. All right, we got Greg Ugaldi in the house. Good job, DC. Live exploring this space. So, Bill, what are the main issues that concern your industry? Great question, Greg.
The main issues that concern the industry. Yeah, it's I think overall the concern of starting something new is really about how to how to everything kind of start up at once, right? When you have something that's brand new, you have this idea of, okay, we have it codified. Okay, great. Well, who's going to make it? So we have a few manufacturers. Back when it went into the code, we only had 2 manufacturers in the whole North America. Now we have like 14. But as you get things scored away, you have the codes and there's manufacturing, then people need to know about it. But then when a lot of people know about it, you're limited on supply. So I think the thing that is toughest around mass timber right now is getting the information out, and then how many people can you get it from, and what does that look like, and how do you reach the suppliers? And then you kind of you have the suppliers that are basically little startups. So how do they move from a 1 shift to 2 shift operation? Because they go from one, basically what their capacity is, and then all of a sudden they're double. Well, now they're really hungry. You got to find more work, right? And so all of that going up. Also, depending on when you ask and who you ask, like, hey, can you build my job? You're going to get a different answer, and that kind of this being in the startup mode, I think, is the toughest thing for mass timber right now.
Yeah, very, very good question. Thanks, Greg. If you don't know who Greg is, everybody out there, he is the past chair of the National Association of Home Builders. The guy that updates the president and secretary of housing a couple times a year on the housing market. And he's a developer himself. He lives and breathes our world, and he's a supporter of offsite and better construction methods. Thanks, Greg. All right, Peter Molinar is in the house. You got to give me big words, Peter. What's the matter with you? Shao-sugi ban, or yakasugi, is a method of preserving and distressing wood by applying an open flame to it. The fire charged the wood, turning the top layer into black ash. Fact or fiction?
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, there's quite a few wood buildings that do this as the finish on the outside. So some of the Whittick building, one of the very first built tall wood buildings, Michael Green was involved in that project, which is why most people know about it, because it's way up north in Canada. But that structure outside has burnt, shigurban, burnt panels, and a lot of firehouses actually use that as their facade panels.
Oh, do they? Great. Mm-hmm. Peter is another smart individual out there, cares about building and the science behind it. So thanks, Peter. Appreciate you. All right, we got the good doctor in the house, Dr. Brett Musson. How are you, sir? You mentioned connections. The best word to wood connection. Let me say that again. The best word, would it be wood to wood connections that exist are Japanese joinery. So why doesn't the industry use more of it?
I think the Japanese joinery is awesome. I agree, but it's also very expensive. So I think that's a part of the thing. We can make a very perfect building, but can you do it at the scale that we need to do? I mean, one of the things that you mentioned, we built 800 buildings, but every year there's 17,000 buildings built that could be using wood by code that aren't. So that's 17,000. This is a little bit of what I'll talk about at IWBC too. But that 17,000, you're not going to build that many if we're hand doing a bunch of things. Now we have the computer side to do lots of the joinery, but to have the wood to wood piece, and also then at the scale of a large building to have that be a ductile connection that deals with seismic drift and those kind of things, then you're kind of beyond what they can do engineering wise. So I think metal and other fasteners make sense. But if you're going to build a small boutique building, you can definitely do that kind of joinery.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dr. Musson, for that question. All right, we're coming down to a few more minutes here, so let's fly through. We got a lot of things happening here. Hey, Will Leverett says, love connectors. Awesome. Good to see you, Will. Thank you. Doug Hayden coming to us from YouTube. And if you're not a subscriber, you should be, because you're going to miss out on a bunch of behind-the-scenes content coming up. As usual, another awesome guest and topic. Well, thank you, Doug. Are you able to get wood frame accepted in all jurisdictions in the U.S.? And will the U.S. catch up with Europe in this regard?
Oh, I love the catch-up questions. Can we catch up to Europe? Are we behind Europe? Why are we behind Europe? And it's such a funny, like we're always, we're competitive, right? So that's why it comes up. I mean, I think that there's the model code is really what we've been talking about, the IBC this whole time. And then, of course, goes down to the city by city, jurisdiction by jurisdiction battle to work out who is what is adopted, how's that going to work. And so we've got I think it's a little less than half the states that are have adopted the 2021 code. The difference between us and Europe, though, is quite different, is that we have a prescriptive code where our code is basically saying, here's what the rules are, and more of the cookbook, do this, then it's a type 4B building. In most of the European buildings that have been built by a performance-based analysis. So that performance-based analysis means, okay, here's what you're the engineer, you can do all the math. That performance-based then can be accepted by the jurisdiction. But in order for somebody to peer review that and for those to go through jurisdictions, that actually takes a lot of time. And the project like an Ascent that had AMMRs associated with it, that took more time for the building officials to go through and sign off on everything, right? So the way that we do it in the US is actually really good, because if we're gonna build those 17,000 buildings, we can't make it hard for every building department to go through this specialty analysis. We would need them to understand what's accepted and then go to, follow. Did this follow the rules? Does this follow the prescriptive code? Great. Boom, boom, boom. This building can be accepted. So that, I think, getting more people to understand, like, how does this math work on fire and the charring is a big piece of getting building officials to understand and adopt the code. But because of the rigor of the testing, people are very accepting of it. It's just, everybody's pressured to, like, how does this little building department take in a new code? Same thing with, energy codes and everything else. Everyone wants new stuff all the time. And so it takes a while to get them to adopt it. But most people, once it's in the code, like 2024 is only adopted in a couple places, they're kind of accepting of like a quick AMMR related to that, because it's been looked at by building officials across the country.
Awesome. Doug, thank you for the question. I'm just going to put one more comment up here from YouTube. It's great watching you guys talk about something I am passionate about. And from the looks of the way the social media is lit up, a lot of people are passionate and a lot of people are interested in learning all this great stuff. So really, really do appreciate you taking the time to come on. Bill, is there anything that you want to leave us with before we wrap up and put that promo code back up to where you can save yourself $200 at the IWBCC?
Yeah, we're here to help and hope to connect with you at these conferences that's going on, and really looking forward to seeing people in DC, and just let us know if we can be of assistance.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Listen, thank you for tuning in today. If you are not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, please go there and subscribe and hit that like and bell. We're going to have a lot of great content coming up. We will be at all the different trade shows across this country. So if you can't make it, we're going to be reporting live from there and hopefully bringing you more great content and great people. And again, we can't do any of these shows without all of your support out there. So please hit those thumbs up on LinkedIn and YouTube and others, because it really does help us continue our journey of how we're going to all build it better. Bill Parsons, thank you so much. We will see you at the Industrialized Wood-Based Conference, and I'm looking forward to your keynote.
You bet. Thanks, Dave.
Everybody else, have an awesome Labor Day weekend. Go relax, cook some burgers, enjoy your time. We'll see you next Wednesday. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching. Bye now. What an amazing show. Thank you to all of our sponsors.